No, you got it right. It's
All right.
Hasaan.
What's going on, Hassan?
Not much. I kind of want to chime in on the conversation y'all just had a little bit because I think I have a different view from both the typical atheist or theist.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, I can't remember who was saying what about we don't know this or we don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something we kind of do know if we just look towards science. I mean, not science, but math. I have an analogy. It says God is to reality what zero is to math. And basically, it proves that whatever we can see or measure has an origin. And of course, typically religion contradicts that origin because they'll sit here and say it's a being of some sort who typically sounds like a narcissistic, I don't know, somebody bipolar.
Yeah.
Sympathetic.
Yeah, if we're talking about Yahweh in particular, yeah, that could definitely be a description.
Well, I think when we look at all of the monotheistic beliefs and not try to bog down the specifics, they all say that there's a creator of the universe, correct?
If we're talking about the three mainstream monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, yeah, they generally agree there was a creator.
Right. And, you know, in my stupid logic, I think, well, if you want to understand the creator of essentially everything, take everything away. What are you left with?
I'm assuming. Wait, you're saying take the creation away, then you get the creator.
Take everything away.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take it out of creator and creation. Take everything away, and you're left with
Nothing.
Nothing.
Hey, baby. So I'm going to say that, you know, instead of people saying God created himself from nothing, which is trash because you need to exist in order to do, or saying God created everything from nothing, understand that your God is actually and literally nothing. And to make sense of it, I go to math. Because if we try to imagine nothing, I mean, like, it's not a very complimentary or flattering thing, correct?
Is zero nothing, though? I don't know. That's a different thing.
Absolute zero? Like, absolute zero as it is on a number line, I would say that would represent what in reality would be nothing. Before it could be a first of anything, there must have been none, correct?
All right, we're going into Tom's territory here, I think. Tom, I can see on his face, he's ready to go. He wants to chime in, so I want to let Tom talk to you here.
Sure. So yeah, I don't believe there was ever an absolute nothing. I think that the idea of nothing, math specifically, is just a language we use to describe reality, but there isn't anything about math that exists. There is no zero anywhere. There's no number line anywhere. It's just a language we use to describe reality. So from my perspective, there was never an absolute nothing. And what it sounds to me like what you're saying is that the ultimate foundation of reality is nothing, and that something came from nothing, and that nothing is the God from your perspective. Do I have that right?
Pretty much, but I do want to chime in and say when you talk about math as being a language, right? The difference between math as a language and whatever we use as words, right, is zero, right? That's what keeps us from being able to play number games the way we play word games. Am I correct? Like every number is defined according to its relation to zero, correct?
Usually numbers are defined in their relation to 1. 0 wasn't even invented until several hundred years after.
Before there could be a first of anything, there must have been what? There must have been, I'll use female presidents of the United States as my example. Before there could be a first.
I'm going to time out just a little bit here.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to follow you here. The first, there can't have been a first of something without the zero of something? Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm saying that in order for there to be a first of anything, there must have previously been how many?
Well,
none,
I mean,
right?
Can there have been a thing that isn't there? Like when we say that something exists, you know, we're defining it in like something that is there that we can observe in reality, but like if it's not actually in reality, can we say that thing is even there? Like
I'm saying no because I used the example female president of the United States. How many female presidents of the United States have we had?
We've had 0. So
right, none. Can you point out an example of zero female presidents of the United States?
Can I point out
But
an
it is a reality.
example of zero?
Right. Can someone give you an example of zero female presidents of the United
Well,
States?
you can't give an example of
Exactly.
nothing.
So of course you can't give an example of zero female presidents of the United States. So it's not even like you have to go to where there's no matter or no space, because you can't even give an example of that. Is that a part of reality? Is it reality that there are zero female presidents of the United States? Is that a reality, or was that just some theory I just made up? Is that a fact, or is that a theory?
But I think we're talking about this might be a problem of language here, because I don't know if we mean I mean, again, this is Tom's kind of territory. I think he's had conversations similar to this before, so I'm going to throw tag team back to Tom here.
Right. So you're right that there are no female presidents of the United States. That is a part of reality, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a part of reality. So to have
Zero,
a first
right?
something, you don't need a zero something. There could just be one eternal thing.
And that eternal train would still go back to zero. All right. Let's not deal with opinions for a second. Let's deal with math for a second, right? Now,
Okay.
I know when I was learning Algebra 1, the first lesson I got was absolute value. I don't know how your education went, but my first lesson was absolute value, and it was basically trying to get you used to the idea of switching between negative and positive. But what they told us, and they said, the absolute value of every number is determined according to its relation to zero. Now, of course, I didn't understand what that was, so the teacher had to show me with the number line. So zero begins all numbers, whether they're positive or negative, right?
It doesn't actually. No, there are certain numbers like imaginary numbers. You know, the number I. Could you point to that on a number line?
I think a number line, I don't know. I don't know if you can point it out on a number line. I know it's related to zero because sometimes you need the opposite perspective of a squared value. That's what an I is. It's the opposite perspective of a squared value, Like, let's not try to play games with these things. It's not really imaginary. It's literally what I just said. The opposite perspective of a squared value. You can't square a number and get a negative. So that's why I is there. It's not really imaginary. That's just language, once again. But that's the problem with words versus numbers. But
well, that's the thing. I is a number, and it isn't related to zero. It's related to squares and directions. It's not about
a variable.
So there are numbers that do not have a relation to zero. Like, for example, infinite isn't exactly a number, but in set theory, there are different kinds of infinites, like alpha null.
Infinite has a limit. Infinite has a limit. What is the limit of infinite? That always infinity
no.
is zero.
No.
Okay, it's the same as one. One has a limit, which is zero. Infinite has a number limit, which is zero. This is math. I'm sorry. This is math. None of what I'm saying is opinion. And what I'm trying to do is say, well, if math relates to reality, because it's useless if it doesn't relate to reality, well, what is the defining characteristics? Like, how do you define numbers according to their relation to zero? And the point that I was about to make before I got sidetracked is I learned this in Algebra 1, 7th grade, somewhere like that. Does that mean that I wasn't using zero before then to start? If I want to start counting with my fingers, I start with a closed fist. That signifies zero. If I want to start as a kid, if I wanted to start counting how many pieces of candy I had, I would move all the pieces of candy to one side, so I have a blank space signifying zero before I can go one. If I wanted to use an abacus, I would slide all the pegs over to one side, signifying zero before I slide the first one. If I wanted to measure how much space something was, I would use the edge of a ruler, signifying zero. Now, because I did not understand that's what I was doing, does not mean that was a reality.
Well, you've just given great examples of how you signified zero, how you used other things as an analogy for a zero and used it in the math.
Because of relative.
Right,
because of relative. Now, here's a question.
Well,
can I start measuring without starting with zero?
Yes.
Can I start measuring anything without starting with zero?
Yes.
47,
What?
82, negative 332. I just started with those numbers. I didn't start with zero.
Yeah, you can have number systems that don't include the number zero.
Excuse me, let's not play word games. I didn't ask y'all, can we call out numbers without starting with zero? I said, can you start measuring something without starting with zero?
Yes. Literally
how did I
zero
get this
didn't
from zero?
exist.
Okay. Once again, because people didn't understand it or recognize it, doesn't mean it didn't exist. When I was a kid, I didn't understand zero, but I was using it constantly.
Zero is an idea. It's a
Yeah.
figment of language.
Yeah,
That's it.
it's a signifier. It's not. I don't think zero exists outside of the abstract. But
Okay. And you're basing this because what?
do you have any evidence of zero?
I'm saying empirical evidence says before there could be a first of anything, there must have previously been none. And I can,
Well, if you can show me a paper that says that, then I'll count that as empirical evidence. But I don't think there's anything that
what is
says
empirical
that.
evidence if it's not? Are we talking about the same thing? Because I think we're trying to duck stuff.
I don't know.
Oh my God.
I don't know, but look, I can count things without using zero. So
Can you start? My question isn't can you count?
yes, we can start without using zero. Absolutely. There's been plenty of number systems developed over the years that do not use the number.
Give me an example. Yeah, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Since there are countless examples, give me one example of your beginning a measurement that does not begin with none.
You can start. There can be a past infinite, so there could be an infinite thing that doesn't ever stop existing. It had always existed.
Give me an example. Give me an example, because I'm going to say zero is infinite. I'm going to say zero is infinite. I'm going to say zero is singular because this is what they say in math. Math, zero is singular. It is the only singular value, unless you want to use Arabic because they got ahad and wahad. But
singular means one.
Yeah, singular means one, right?
Oh my God. And how many zeros can there be?
None.
How many zeros can there be? There can only be how many zeros?
As many as you want, I guess.
There can't be any
There
zero.
can only be one because you cannot multiply. There cannot be multiple zeros. There can only be one.
So what you're saying, Hasaan, is you have zero evidence for your claim.
I'm saying I have 100% evidence. Like if you want to ignore it the same way religious people ignore the logic that you bring up, I mean, sure, have at it, but, you cannot have something finite and infinite. And if you can measure it in part, it is totally measurable, unless it becomes something else, which means it ain't the same thing.
I guess.
I don't know. Call me crazy.
Listen.
No, I mean, I thought y'all were the logical ones. I'm sorry.
You might be, Hasaan. You might be on a whole different level here that Tom and I just can't follow. But I'll be honest. Math this is really cool because we haven't had some deep cuts about math on Truth Wanted pretty much ever. And I know a math thing or two. I know Tom knows a math thing or two. But it's hard for me to get to the point of what you're saying, because I feel like we're talking in the abstract here. You're saying that their God has to be zero because everything points to zero. And
no, here's what I'm saying. I'll clarify for you.
All right.
And I think here's what
let's do one more clarification here, but
okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. So I think part of the disconnect is when I think of math, I think of the most honest language and most objective science to describe and define the attributes of what is real.
Stop. Now, well, we gotta stop. We gotta stop because I don't know if other mathematicians would use that definition for math. I really
There's
don't.
no other mathematician here in this conversation, so I'm talking to you two gentlemen, correct?
So I think I understand what he's trying to say. Can I try to rephrase your argument and you tell me if I'm right? So what you're saying is that for there to be any one, there must be a zero before it. Therefore, because reality exists, that's the one. There must have been a zero before that, and so the zero is the foundation of everything. Is that right?
And that is the singularity. Yes, that is the singularity. I'm going to say zero is a singularity, not infinitesimal. I'm going to say that, that where people where the whole argument against theology comes into play is because most versions, or all versions for that matter, contradict the premise of a creator. Zero doesn't contradict the premise of a creator. It actually explains it and makes sense. But I first want to get back to our definition of math. So my definition faulty? Is my definition of math faulty in some way?
I feel like we literally created zero, though. Human beings created zero, right? So that
it's an invention. It's an invention. I mean, it's not an invention. It's a discovery.
So we
didn't invent zero. We did not invent zero.
Okay.
Because hold on, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Before the Persian mathematician or whoever else got credit for the concept of zero, Was there such thing as none?
Sure.
As a descriptor, yes.
So zero as a reality. There was always none before somebody.
I don't know as a reality. I don't know what that means.
Check it out.
As a reality.
None of whatever. None of whatever. So if, say, I'm some peasant and we haven't been somewhere where they discover zero yet, and I have no coins in my pocket, do I have to wait for somebody to discover zero before there are no coins in my pocket? There's no coins in my pocket. If whatever it is I'm discussing, if I have none of it, do I need somebody to discover zero for there to be none? I'm confused. I'm confused by this whole history lesson where we think that once we discover something,
because
that's when it.
The difficulty comes when we're saying nothing exists, because by definition, something existing really can't not be there. Like, it has to be there. So if we're saying that not having coins exists, which is kind of what you're saying, because you're saying zero exists, then yeah, I guess so. But that's like, I feel like that's a stretching. Look,
I used female presidents earlier to give you the same example.
I can't have you interrupt me while I'm talking like this, man.
My bad.
This.
You're right. I apologize. You're right. I apologize.
But here's the deal. Like, I obviously you've been thinking about this, and this is something you've been researching, and you have some examples here. I think we're trying to engage with something that could be misconstrued through semantics and stuff. At the end of the day, I guess if you had to convince me that, because your main point that you were trying to talk about when you were first calling it was like what the creator has to do with zero and how we can kind of relate zero to the creator. But I think like you were giving some definitions of zero or some like assumptions about zero that kind of made us lose track a little bit, that we may not follow, and maybe some definitions about math too that may be hard for us to follow. So like this might be a definitional issue that we're having here. Tom, what do you think?
My bad.
One really interesting question, which is how can you have something, like how can you start counting but not from zero?
That is interesting.
The answer to that question is reality. So when you start with reality, it doesn't start with zero. You don't start with no reality. You start with reality, and whatever is that which exists is reality. It doesn't start with zero. It starts with one. It starts with just reality.
Okay, and I'm gonna piggyback on two things real quick. First of all, I gave a definition of math that I've asked. Is there something faulty or flawed in that definition whatsoever?
I do think so, but can you repeat it again?
Okay, I'm going to say math is the most honest language and objective science for defining and describing the attributes of reality.
But is math an objective science?
No, science is specifically referring to things in the world.
I thought that's what we use for proofs for any other science.
Wait, we use it for science. I totally agree with you. But is math a science in itself, though? Like, I wouldn't say a microscope is science, right? Like that in itself, it's a tool used for science, right? But I wouldn't call a microscope science. Does that make sense?
I'm not going to think of. First of all, I'm not going to split hairs there.
Okay.
Because that's one of the sidetracks.
Well, you're saying math is an objective science. I feel like that's a big deal. Like, I feel like that's something worth splitting hairs about, right? Like,
I think it's a science of sciences. Like, call me crazy. It's what we use to prove everything else. It's not like a tool such as a microscope. It's literally what we turn to science. When we don't have empirical evidence, we turn to numbers.
No, so math is not science. Math is a language. Math is a formal language. You can just go to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Is it the most honest language? Is it the most honest language for defining? Do we have something more honest?
I don't know about honest.
Do we have anything more
objective? Yes, we have logic.
Do we have a language? Okay, logic is a part of math, I thought.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Let's do like one more minute here, Hasaan, and then I got to get to my next call, but I'll let you finish.
Okay, so I forgot what the second point was, but my main issue is math relates to reality, right? And you were saying something about you can measure reality. So the only thing that you're saying does not start with zero is the entirety of reality. Because if we use any particular individual thing that we know we can measure, we start with what? Do we not start with zero?
No, we start with one. We always start with one.
No, we start with zero, and I'm going to keep going back to female presidents of the United States. Do you want me to go to Obama? The only reason why we had a first black president is because prior to that, how many did we have?
How many realities existed before reality?
Well, I think this is a reality that there are 0 female presidents of the United States.
No, I mean reality as a
think that's
whole.
reality.
There's always been a reality. There hasn't ever not been a reality.
Yes,
so reality
yes,
started
yes.
with 1. It
And
didn't start with 0.
And I'm going to say, no, check this out. I'm going to say that whatever this nothing that I'm talking about, because, you know, there is no true nothing. Even if we take away everything that we can measure, that's still something that is the absence of all the things that we can measure. That would still be something. So I'm going to say that 0, nothing, whatever the case, is a part of reality. It is the only reality that is not dependent on anything else for its existence or definition.
Okay. Well, with that, I think I have to go ahead and end the call here. I want to give you a thanks again, Hasaan, for calling in. This is definitely a very different question from what we usually get on here, and I like that. I like that we get to talk about some cool stuff.
Can I give a personal plug real quick before I go?
I will give you 10 seconds to give a plug because I'm sure some people might be interested to see where you're going.
Thank you. So my website is zerothemathgod.com. The book is Theology for the New Millennium by Hasaan B. Fly. zerothemathgod.com. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you, Hasaan. I appreciate you calling in. And gosh, what a call.